You better wait. I'm not sure if they're going to even have the public hearing. We had to have it on the agenda because it was noticed. Huh?
Good evening and welcome to tonight's, good evening. Welcome to everyone to tonight's City Council meeting of March 9th, 2020. We're going to call tonight's meeting to order. We're going to begin tonight with an invocation, and Walter, I understand you're going to handle invocation and the pledge. All right, and Mr. Jones is going to handle our invocation first, and that will be followed by a pledge with some helpers on hand to assist with that. So first we'll begin with the invocation with Mr. Jones. Everybody rise, please.
If you'll pray with me, please. Thank you, Lord, for this beautiful day, all the many blessings that you bestow upon us. We thank you especially tonight for the Trendsetters group who is going to be leading us in our pledge tonight. We thank you so much for the leadership of Coach Steve Sills. We thank you for Mrs. McCormick, Mrs. Adams, Officer Poldance, and all the parents that have supported this wonderful organization over the years. They are what make Homewood so special, and we're so pleased that they have decided to come join us tonight. Thank you for everything that you bring to us. I hope we have a very productive meeting, and all these things we ask in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
And I'm going to ask the Trendsetters to come up here, and they will be leading the Pledge of Allegiance for us. So everybody come up. I believe we have one quick announcement here. What you want to say?
Sure. I want to thank the City Council so much for the opportunity for the Trendsetters to come here and lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Now you stand and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Face the flag.
Face the flag.
Here we go. Salute.
Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much, Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Hold on, Trendsetters, for just a second. Mr. Jones, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Yes, sir. I just want to let you know we have one more little thing for you, Coach Sills. If you don't mind, the mayor's going to come up here, if that's okay with you. And as he's coming up, I do want to point out we do have three members of our Board of Education here tonight. So we have Justin Russell, Judy Truitt, Aaron Stevenson. They're all here. And then we also have Mr. Jimmy Pearson, who's here supporting Coach Sills as well. So I'm going to turn it over to the mayor. We have a little thing for you here.
Thank you, Councilman. Coach, I see you got the memo. Guys, y'all want to come stand with the coach over here? This may be the best kept secret in Homewood tonight, because I know you had no clue about this. So we have a proclamation to honor you tonight. Whereas the city of Homewood would like to extend our heartiest congratulations to Coach Steve Sills. It's reassuring to know that those who work so hard achieve the recognition they deserve. And whereas Coach Steve Sills founded the community service group Trendsetters at Homewood Middle School, which has grown to over 300 members. And whereas, along with Coach Steve Sills, the Trendsetters work together on a variety of projects such as collecting disaster supplies, holding a Regency retirement senior prom, packing meals at the annual Rise Against Hunger, and cheering games at the Exceptional Foundation. And whereas Coach Steve Sills advanced his 8th grade football team to the Metro Middle School Championship and was awarded Coach of the Year award from the National Positive Coaching Alliance. And whereas Coach Steve Sills has demonstrated in countless ways his dedication to the welfare of others and has earned the respect and affection of people from all walks of life and ages. And whereas Steve Sills is not only a coach, motivator, and character builder, he's also known as DJ Sills around the city and the surrounding area. So now, therefore, I, Scott McBrayer, Mayor of the City of Homewood, and the City Council of the City of Homewood, Alabama, and on behalf of all of our citizens, hereby express our sincere appreciation and thanks to Coach Steve Sills for his selfless service to this city, and highly commend him for the manner in which he carries out his duties and responsibilities. Coach, thank you so much. So let's,
Hey, Coach Sills, could I just say that we had to do some Facebook stalking over there because Walter Jones wasn't quite sure that was how your name was pronounced on the DJ. So we had some Facebook stalking going on.
Thanks, Coach. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Coach Sills. And you and the trendsetters are welcome to exit at any moment you want. I would hate for you to have to suffer through our meeting, although you have helped us off to a great start, and we're grateful for that and grateful for your service. Thank you, sir. And thank you, Walter, and thank you, Mayor. All right, with that, we'll begin with roll call. Ms. Salter?
Yes, sir. Mr. Gwaltney? Here. Mr. Thames? Here. Mr. Higginbotham? Here. Mr. Wolverton? Here. Mr. McCluskey?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Smith? Here. Mr. Wyatt?
Here.
Mrs. Andress?
Here.
Mr. Harden?
Here.
And President Wright. Everybody's here.
Thank you. And I'll begin first, entertain a motion for dispense with the reading of the minutes from February 24th, 2020.
We did make a correction. Did you see the correction that we sent out to see if that was okay?
I did not see it. Was it the two that I sent you? Yeah, then
I
that's,
asked him to send it back out to you, but
I
we
didn't
made the
see
two
'em.
corrections that you said.
thank you.
Okay. Good.
Then I move to approve with the two corrections.
All right, motion to approve with
Second.
two corrections, the two Andress corrections. Second by Mr. Harden. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the minutes for February 24th, 2020 stand approved. As for board vacancies and appointments, I think we have one for the Homewood Environmental Commission for an appointment at large. Mr. Hickenbotham, are you ready for that one today?
Well, I know we received the application, but I don't know if we received any others.
And I didn't get a chance to tell you before that.
Okay,
They
if
went away,
we're-
but I think we only got the one that I sent out. I have it.
Yes.
We're having a discussion as to whether we received more than one candidate for this position on the Homewood Environmental Commission, which is an at-large position.
It closed today, but
It closed today.
as far as I know, that's the only one.
And do you want to make that appointment today, Mr. Hickenbotham?
Yes, I would like to go ahead and place this name in nomination. I know that Melody did send it. I just didn't know if we'd received anybody else. That was what I was trying
Okay.
to ask, to see if we needed to do interviews. I would submit the name of Mary Liz Ingram in the nomination for the at-large position on the Homewood Environmental Commission.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second for Mary Liz Ingram to be appointed as the new at-large member for the Homewood Environmental Commission. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so congratulations to Mary Liz Ingram, and Melody, if you will let her know about her appointment.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
Mr.
if I could just
Hickenbotham.
make one other observation.
Sure.
Hopefully will not be out of order, and just to thank the outgoing member of that at-large position, Amy, who has done so much for the city relative to the Homewood Environmental Commission, and now continues to serve in environmental issues at Sims Garden. So we thank her for her time on the commission, and just wanted her to know how much we appreciate what she's done.
Yes.
Well said, Mr. Hickam. Thank you, Amy, for so many hours of service. Look forward to many more in a different area. So, all right. I'm trying to think. I guess we have one item of.
Mr. President.
Oh,
One more.
Oh.
One more
yes, sir,
appointment.
Mr. Mayor. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. You have another
No,
appointment.
that's
Please.
okay. I'd like to reappoint Mr. Jake Collins to the at-large position for the Homewood Historical Commission.
All right, I don't think any council action is necessary for that, but thank you,
No,
Mr.
sir.
Mayor. So Jake Collins will be appointed to the Homewood Historical Commission. Thank you for that.
I'll let you know, Mayor.
And I believe we have one item to amend to the agenda tonight, which we discussed, 060220, which is going to be request for consideration for, it was a request for consideration of funding street improvements, but it's really for our capital and improvements issue. And we're going to, there's already an item in finance on this, this subject, but we're going to take it up today to make sure it goes to finance. And again, that's going to be 060220. And so with that amendment, I will entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda as amended. So moved. By Mr. McCluskey, second by Mr. Gwaltney. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the agenda is approved as amended. We'll begin with our consent agenda, and I will entertain a motion for approval of our consent agenda items. Second. By Mr. Thames, second by Mr. Wyatt. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so those items stand approved, 11-0 vote. That gets us to our old business agenda. First item is 12-10-19, which is a public hearing set for tonight for consideration to rezone the Homewood Downtown District from multiple zoning classifications to 3 new mixed-use categories: low-intensity district, medium-intensity district, and high-intensity district, to implement recommendations contained within the approved Heart of Homewood Downtown Master Plan. This was a public hearing set for tonight. This item has not come down to City Council, so we will not have a public hearing tonight. We will have to drop this item. And so with that, I will entertain a motion to drop.
Second.
By Mr. Thames. A second by Ms. Andrus. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so this item is dropped, and this again is 12-10-19, and we will hope for this item to get to us at a perhaps a better time when we can look at our zoning and the issues that do need to be addressed. And hopefully when the issues do come before City Council, we can have a good discussion. We've had a lot of issues discussed. We have a good product to look at and to work off of. We've had a lot of work behind it. With that, I really do want to take the opportunity to thank council members who have put countless hours into this project, and look forward to it coming to us at perhaps a better time, and we can have a good discussion, where we can have a discussion where people have disagreement, innocent disagreement on an issue. Doesn't mean somebody's wrong-headed or corrupt or anything like that. We can have a good city discussion on this when it comes back to us. And so we will look forward to that happening in the future, and we will move on with our agenda tonight. So thank you for that. Next item is going to be 070120, which is a public hearing tonight for consideration to rezone property at 1619 Oxmoor Road from an R5 to a C1C. The applicant for this is Riverbrook LLC, doing business as Riverbrook Design and Construction. Coming to us from Lee and Kevin Meza for the purpose to permit the utilization of an existing building for a design and construction service business. And this came from the Planning Commission with a vote of 7-0 for an unfavorable recommendation. And we do have a public hearing on this tonight, and so I will go ahead and open the public hearing on this for tonight. And so with that, I will go ahead and open anyone to, and Mr. Galloway, you can certainly begin to please line up, and if you're going to speak in favor or against this item, to start by coming to Melody and to sign in. And Trip, have you already done that?
I have not.
Okay. If you guys will do that and sign in first, and you can line up here, and I will ask you to please keep your comments concise and non-repetitive as you can, and we certainly look forward to hearing from each and every one of you. All right, Mr. Galloway, you can go begin. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I represent the proponent, Riverbrook LLC, and we have been here before discussing the proffer of a C1C zoning, rezoning of this property from the current R5 zoning. And I believe the council has the materials that constitute the proffer. And so in keeping with the chairman's request, what I'd like to do is I'll try to be as brief as possible. I have Mr. Misso here, and we'd like to reserve some time, just very limited if needed, for reply after the public speaks, if that's a possibility, Mr. Chairman. Basically, what we have is we have a building that has been situated here for decades, and it is zoned R5, which, as everyone knows, allows for apartments. It is our desire not to use this property for apartments, but instead to modify, recast the existing building consistent with the proffer so that Mr. Misso may use his business there. We seek to have very strict, self-imposed, essentially, strict requirements and standards that we feel, if fairly viewed, will be seen to be a better result for Homewood as a whole and for the majority of the neighborhood, if not all the neighborhood. Now, consistent with what the chairman said earlier about the downtown zoning, we acknowledge that rational minds can disagree, and that it doesn't mean that if someone does not accept our viewpoint that we advocate that should be wrong thinking. We don't say that. But I think if one steps back and looks at it, the reality is, and this is meant to be a representation of what reality is, not a threat, but this property is owned R5. And if we can't get this proffer of C1C, the owner of the property is going to be faced with a decision. And most likely, the realistic decision that will come from that result is that there will be an effort to put apartments on the property, some multifamily conforming use. That is not the first choice. If that was the first choice, which is probably a greater economic benefit to the owner, we wouldn't be here. We don't want to do that. We prefer not to do that. So I have Mr. Misso, who is the principal in Riverbrook here, and he will come forward and answer any questions that y'all may have at this point. But it is, I appreciate the consideration y'all have given us, allowing us to tender this proffer. And it is our hope that, as evidenced by the signatures on a petition Mr. Misso has, that the council will see there is support for this within the community and within property owners in close proximity to the property. Is there unanimous support? No, there's not. But the decision to rezone rests with the elected officials. We do not zone by plebiscite in Alabama. The elected officials zone. Now, y'all do so with the input from the community, acknowledged, and that's a fair process. That's how it should be. So at this time, I'd like to step aside, let Mr. Misso give his presentation, and then answer any questions that the council may have for him.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Meza?
Again, Kevin Misso and my wife Lee Misso own the property, and we are right now on Highway 31 in a small 800 square foot building with compounding pharmacy, diabetes shop, and a CPA firm. We have like 3 small rooms in that building when we have outgrown it. I say we've outgrown it. We're maxed to capacity there, and this house, if it rezoned C1C, would be used for personnel only, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. We don't work on weekends, so to think would be back and forth. I don't own any equipment. There would be no equipment on site. Our building materials, we subcontract 100% of what we do. We manage people on a daily basis, so there would be people in that house. Our building materials stay on the construction sites when we're working on a project. Again, several of these petitions I submitted to Melody, and I've gotten a few more, maybe 5 or 6 since I've submitted it my last time. of the over 50 signatures in Edgewood within about 5 blocks of the house, over 10% of that is from East, West Glenwood, and Oxmoor. So houses that are immediately affected. With that all being said, that's it. Any questions? I guess.
Thanks, sir. Any questions while he's up here?
Yeah, Mr.
Hickenbottom?
Chairman, just for the benefit, obviously, there are a number of people here who want to speak, and I suspect there are more in the audience who are here for this issue. Could you just briefly outline what the conditions you're agreeing to are, since you're
Absolutely.
offering conditions?
So the conditions we're agreeing to was for this structure to stay, this structure. So this house right here was built in 1930s. We are proposing that it stayed that house for 99 years. We have offered basically a proffer saying that we would operate out of the house. If I sold this house to Tripp tomorrow, or anybody else in this audience, you would have to operate out of that house. You couldn't tear the house down. If the house was blown away with a tornado tomorrow, you got to rebuild that house in that footprint and operate your business out of it. This is as strict of a zoning. You know, C1 offers so many multiple options. C1C just says you can only have an office out of it in that house. We can't expand outside the house. If we wanted to screen in the front porch, we would have to then go back to city council and ask to screen in the front porch. No changes can be made other than the exhibit here. I think the house actually adds to the character of the neighborhood right there. If there's a big 2-story high-rise with multifamily there, I don't think it would have the same welcoming as this cute little house. I mean, it's got pecan trees, fig trees I could eat this summer. You know, it's just neat. But anyway, that's it. Nothing could be done to answer your question other than this for 99 years.
And as I understood you, could only be used for office, is that correct?
For office only.
Can I ask a quick question?
Mr. Jones?
So you have already decided on signage? So you have
We have. This sign we actually have on our building now on 31. We would just keep the same sign and move it to the building.
Have you spoken with Mr. Cobb or someone in engineering zoning to determine if you'd need a variance for that sign?
I haven't. We have surveyed the property. If that's not within the variance, we don't need the sign.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I'll ask one, if you can give me just sort of a little head count on the adjacent property owners down there. What, as far as folks who are nearby, they probably are all here.
They are.
So how are we lining up with regard to support for this and opposition to this with regard to those nearby neighbors, please?
Hands down by Oxmoor, directly across the street, the closest 3 houses, I'd say 2 of the 3 owners are here. That's 1608, 1606, 1604. One works at the Homewood Community Center. She's 80. She walks back and forth. She's in this part-time. She couldn't come. She would have been here. She signed the petition, and she, Miss Jo is great. Her and her husband lived here almost 40 years. He passed away. She said she always thought that it could be commercial. She never thought it'd be multifamily. We've got 101 West Glenwood that backs up to the property here. Amber and her mother. You know, I have 6 residents right now from West Glenwood on the north side are here, super close to the area at hand. I think the handover neighbors, we've had several neighbors send out emails. I've got copies of every email and forward every email that's been sent out to City Council. I think every City Council member here may have had an email from someone within the community at least 4 times. Everyone in whole is for this. I tried to knock on every single door. There were a small fraction in opposition, and I respect that. You know, but I do know the community as a whole, and I've knocked on every door, are for the small office to keep the cool character that this 1930 house added to that corner. Nobody, it's a buffer.
All right, thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, just so the council members would have the benefit, these are, if I could approach for you to distribute.
Sure.
These are,
I'm going to hold you in contempt while I do that if I have the opportunity.
But those are,
Always
that-
wanted that.
That's a tax map showing
Yeah, what-
the Oklahoma-shaped piece that the Nunleys own, that's an apartment parking lot adjoining our property. But in response to your question, Mr. Chairman, there are essentially two residential lots that abut this property directly. There is a third lot on West Glenwood that has a very, very small point of touching, but principally there are two West Glenwood homes, one of which, 101, Mr. Misso referenced. They have expressed support in the petition.
Okay. All right.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Harden.
So how many parking spaces do you plan to have there?
We, on the very last handout, I just handed Mr. Wright, have the survey proposed by Ray Wagan that we proposed on our original plan. It would be keeping the same impervious area that it has now. It would be 8, and it would not extend outside the existing driveway and already existing parking in the back. So we weren't going to extend any further in the green area. I think our impervious on our proposed was 36%. I think you're allowed 50% in the city of Homewood, so we were well under our criteria there to gain the few spaces that we were requesting.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, next to speak in favor or against this item.
How are you guys? I'm Brian Thompson. I'm at 1608 Oxmoor Road. I've lived at that address for 8 years. Have kids. He'll probably run up here in a second. But I'm all for growth. I love growth. I do not want an apartment building anywhere near my house. It takes me 15 minutes to pull out of my driveway in the mornings as it is. I've sat through these city council meetings before and talked about traffic studies. I mean, that road is just an immense amount of traffic. And develop the downtown all you want. Just let it get big. But, I mean, we need a buffer. And it doesn't need to be apartments. Let's maintain the small town feel. Because, I mean, that is the entrance of Homewood. I mean, if anybody that comes in from out of town, that is where they drive. And that is, they pass the park, they're heading down, down to Broadway. So that is the first thing they see. And we don't need a big apartment complex any more than we already have. So,
Are you concerned about more cars if it does go to apartments?
absolutely.
If it goes to apartments?
Yes, if it goes to apartments.
Which could be the possibility if,
Yes.
okay.
I can understand this, and I can frame this in my mind of what it's going to do for the next 99 years, and I'm totally okay with that. So a bird in the hand is really great.
Gotcha.
Have no idea what's going to happen in 20 years, but I like this.
Okay, gotcha. All right, thank you,
So,
sir.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you guys for the time. I'm here in support. Kevin and Lee were the very first people to welcome me and my family to Homewood. We live on Chase Creek Parkway, so not adjacent to the property. But I would look at this and say, what benefits Homewood the most? They are a young family, young kids that aren't started school yet, and they live in this community. So having something that would support them, helping the community grow, and helping them to contribute to this community would be what this would support for this would do. Having them with the only alternative but to build apartment complex would definitely not be the case there. So, for us, 3 kids in school, I would definitely like to see not more growth in the schools. I'd like to see a business that was growing and contributing to the community. And I think he's done everything, Kevin's done everything he can to make sure that everyone can feel comfortable with what's going to be there and what's going to be there long term. So hopefully you guys will kind of reconsider the previous vote and kind of push this through. But appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Mr. Wright, can I just?
Hello.
Can I just?
Hold on just a second.
Sorry.
Yes, Ms. Andrews?
Can I just clarify for Mr. Armstead? Hi. That was not, that previous vote was not from the council, that was from the planning commission, so that it is, we sent it out without recommendation from committee.
All right, thank you. please.
Okay. Hi, I'm Katie Wallace, and I will just speak to what Mr. Winslow had just mentioned. I am in favor of C1C. I'm not in favor of R5, and like he mentioned, I've been a teacher for Homewood City Schools for 11 years, and I have seen firsthand what zoning can do to a school system. And if it is C1C, it's from a family who's planted in Homewood, whose children will go to Homewood City Schools. Whereas if it was R5, it would be, it contribute to the transient population of Homewood City Schools. So again, I'm in favor of C1C. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
My name's Robert Towns. I'm fairly new to Homewood, but I do support it. I live at 102 Ridge Road, right up the road. I'm not against apartments, and I'm not against him doing it, but I asked him 3 questions. Does it kick anybody out? Because I didn't know if there was already apartments there because I just moved here. He's like, no. I was like, are you putting any kind of business that could question somebody's morals? He said, no. I said, are you going to store heavy equipment? He said, no. So I didn't really see what would hurt. He bought the property fair and square. So I support it. Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, I'm Wayne Woolley, 317 East Glenwood Drive, about 700 yards to the south of the property. I was on Planning Commission 15 years ago, and the request was to make this a snow cone stand. And this is a better idea than a snow cone stand. But I do come to speak in opposition of the project. Frequent the road on foot and by car to the rec center. My family of 5 frequent visitors there, so we're 22-year residents of the neighborhood and have a vested interest, of course, in the maximized value and use and ambiance, what have you, of this corner. The R5 zoning, I believe, serves as a proper buffer to the NPD to its south and to its west. The R5 to the east is complementary, and the institutional to the north. So while there's been great effort to reach compromise and accommodations and whatnot, I do believe any zoning other than the R5 would be some sort of spot zone on condition there. So I support the R5 zoning. I have not done the math on allowable units on that patch of earth if it were apartments, but as a half-acre or so lot, my assumptions would be that it would be minor in terms of the unit count on that corner. So I, again, speak in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woolley.
Good evening, Council. My name is Stan Way from West Glenwood Drive. I'm here to speak in favor of the rezoning. I'm a proud Birmingham City business owner. I'm more proud to be a resident of Homewood. I love West Glenwood Drive. I love taking my kids to the park. I love looking around, seeing Hero Donuts. I love seeing what happens in our city. I love to see the growth, but more importantly, I think of what my kids will see. I think of this house that for the last 2 years has looked rather in disrepair with grass growing, nothing happening. And I like the idea that for the next 99 years, the history of Homewood and this beautiful house might be preserved in a 1930s style to remind my children and your children and our grandchildren the beauty and the growth that can come here in the city of Homewood. I speak in favor of the rezoning because I walk by this place with my children, I ride by on bikes, and I know the importance of Homewood. And I love this city, and because I love this city, and I know you do, I know you'll vote in favor as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Ralston Curley, and I can't really say it much better than Stan just did. I'm his next door neighbor. I'm here in support of Riverbrook and think it should definitely be the house instead of public housing, and just wanted to kind of come up here and show my support.
Let's be clear, let's clarify, it's not public housing.
That's a different.
Oh, okay.
It's multifamily, as opposed to.
I would rather it be, no, not multifamily.
Yeah, right, but it's not public housing, yeah.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello.
You already signed in?
I'm on the
Okay.
list. I'm lazy, so I said.
Go ahead, please.
My name is Blakely
You just
Nash.
you threw us all off.
I'm sorry,
Just
this is what I do. I have known Lee for my entire life, and I've been a resident of Homewood for 5 years. I have a daughter in 2nd grade at Edgewood, and one that will start kindergarten. And what drove us to choose Homewood was the charm that it has, the small town feel, the character, the lack of cookie cutters, and the excellent school system. So just a lot of what I want to say has already been said, but I don't want to see my children lose the great school system that we came here for due to constant adding of multifamily housing in this case, and then just the other homes that are being built. That's another issue. I am a former client of Riverbrook. Our home was built in 1968, and they just helped us redesign the interior of the home to make it more livable for families today. I can speak to their character, their integrity, and their desire to maintain the character as much as they can in these homes in Homewood. They're not bulldozing them and building gigantic mansions. They're doing what they can to tweak what's there. As Homewood residents, I know that's why they have chosen to live here as well. And I would vote in favor to keep this, or rather to rezone this to a C1C to, as everyone said, maintain the charm that that 99-year-old home has. I don't think anything that they're putting on there signage-wise, parking-wise, is invasive or over the top, corporate looking, and I think it's a nice option as opposed to multifamily housing. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Next.
Hi, I'm Lauren Steele. I live on 415 Kenilworth Drive. It's a little bit behind. It's not directly adjacent, but it is in the neighborhood. And I'm definitely in favor of the C1C. I can absolutely speak to Lee and Kevin's character. We moved here about 2.5 years ago, and I definitely sought out Homewood just for the charm, for the aesthetic of it, for the history of it. I cried when we signed our lease, when we signed the contract, because I was ecstatic. I'm from Starkville, Mississippi, where there are so many apartments. And so I really love the charm of Homewood, and I would love to just keep the house exactly as it is. I love how it has to be the same way for 99 years. I don't think it's, I don't think that it's, they're going to make it a business, but I feel like it's going to look more like a house, much more so than apartments would look like. So I'm definitely in favor of Lee and Kevin and the C1C. I also have an 11-month-old, and everything that's been said about the schools definitely speaks to me, as well as the traffic. And yeah, so that's where I stand.
Great. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name's Andrea Rhodes. I live at 1604 Oxmoor. I can see the house from my porch. My wife and I moved here 3 years ago. We love the neighborhood. We love the houses. When we bought our house, our house is 1928, 1929. The first thing they said is, what are you going to do with it? And they wanted us to tear it down, make a bigger house. We've spent $75,000 of our money, and I've put my time into renovating our house. We put a brand new retention wall in. We've made it look pretty, something that I can't even see, so Oxmoor will have a nice something to look at. We absolutely love the character of the neighborhood. We love the old houses. It's something you can't replace. I'm not against housing of other types of housing, but this house is already there. It's a beautiful house. They've kept it up okay. This gentleman wants to put his name and his business on this. I think he's going to keep it up, make it look very, very nice. I think it's, as I said, it's the gateway out of our community center. I love to see this house brought up, made a lot nicer, to look good. So obviously, I'm in favor of this. And I have a vested interest. I see this all the time, and I care about my property values. And I think this gentleman, as he mentioned, he came and he met with all of us for 2 hours. He met with all of our neighbors. He came back there. I told him right away I was on board, but he spent time explaining exactly what he was going to do, showing us the plans. It's a guy that cares. And I care about my house. I care about the history of Homewood. And I really appreciate somebody taking an extremely valuable piece of property. You could do all kinds of things with that property. And he wants to keep it a house for 99 years. And I think that's fantastic. So I really appreciate this. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Duncan Chancellor. I'm at 116 East Glenwood Drive. So I back up to the property separated by the ditch and then a parking lot right next to the ditch. I am on behalf of a lot of members of our street and residing community. So just speaking on behalf of them, as we've all signed a letter that's been submitted to you guys in the past week or so. So first, I do want to say a sincere thank you to all of you and the Mesos and their diligence in this process. Kevin is right that he has knocked on a lot of doors, and he's explained this going back to, I believe, right before Christmas maybe. So he has been diligent in trying to get with all of us and understand what he's trying to do. The reasons for our opposition have not wavered since we met as a group after that meeting. He has those... The reasons for that are increased traffic on East Glenwood and West Glenwood. If you've noticed traffic on East Glenwood specifically, it is atrocious with the apartments right there and not being classified. And I understand from talking to my ward representatives, it's very difficult. We can't go back and grandfather anything in. So it's public parking, and that's where the apartments are allowed to park on that street. So we already face a significant parking issue there, increased traffic, and the way that I presented this in the council meeting before in the previous chambers was basically increased traffic for customer meetings, increased traffic for subcontractor meetings, as well as individuals maybe coming by their office to get paid on a Friday. You can't pull trucks and trailers into their parking lot with the way that it's designed today. There's no room for it. So that leaves a viable option to park on East Glenwood or park in the parking lot right next to my house, or park in the Exceptional Foundation lot and the Rec Center lot. Sorry, I'm blanking. So the future state of the property is also of concern. I spoke with Alex about this. While this is a C1C and there are conditions on it, it's understood that if it were to be sold, then that person can submit for C2. And while we have faith that this council won't do that, our faith can't lie on a council forward that might approve for commercialization going forward of a greater variance. And the C1C as well, I don't see anywhere, I've heard 99 years a lot. I don't see anywhere in his submission where there is a 99-year track on that. And if somebody wants to speak to that and I'm wrong, then I'm happy to hear that.
I can speak to that. The city can't put restrictive covenants on the property. We can condition it. It can only be used for the purposes that they proffered, but the 99 years is not in here.
Okay.
It's not applicable to the city. If he wants to put restrictions on it himself, he certainly could do that.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. 19 neighbors in the surrounding area have signed this letter opposing the restrictions and opposing the commercial zoning of the property. As you can see here, we've highlighted all 19 signatures. In the center is where Mr. and Ms. Meso bought the property for Riverbrook. Surrounding that is pink. As you can see, there's only 3 houses that are not in opposition to this or that we did not get in touch with that are directly affected in the in this zoning. So if I'm happy to pass this around. I don't have copies if you don't have it, but I will. I
believe that was attached to the email we received this week too. Yes.
Okay, great. So the properties that have signed that are East Glenwood, West Glenwood, and Oxmoor Road. A lot of those neighbors are here tonight to show support and opposition of this. Reasons by those 19 neighbors, and I wrote this down to make sure I got it right, or the way the property is cared for, the future state of the rezoning to a commercial property, the overlooking the property and its commercial use, traffic, the monitoring of violations set forth in the proffer, and a water study of the property done since the last meeting. I believe a report was submitted to you all from Spencer Engineering, and that was a study done on the property in relation to flooding. This is different than the floodway that I spoke to that affects my property. I think there's some different restrictions if it does go to a stay R5 is the way that they can be built on. But this study was done on the property in relation to flooding. If the Mesos were to add 8 to 10 parking spaces and 2 additional up front, this study was done by Spencer Environmental, and it says that the impact of a rain event would be significant to the adjacent areas, and impact would be felt as far as properties on Broadway with pervasive flooding in the area already. So while I speak in opposition to this, I do want the council to know that we understand as a community and as those 19 neighboring homes and properties that we understand this zone R5, and we're in favor of keeping it R5.
Can I ask you one question? I just want to be clear. So I think you were the second person said, so you view traffic as being worse with a business than you do with if it were multifamily or apartments?
I do, and the reason for that, Mr. Wright, is more along the lines and the times of day that traffic comes along. If it's, you're going to go with typical residential traffic if those R5 apartments are allowed to be built.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Jesse Cash. I'm currently the homeowner. My wife and I own 303 East Glenwood Drive. And as of about a week ago, we also own 136 West Glenwood Drive. I decided to come here tonight to learn about this project and kind of just give my input. I've taken my son by this piece of property on the way to the park multiple times. It's just not an attractive home. As someone who has bought now 2 homes in this immediate area, I don't have to sit here and tell anyone that Homewood is a very hot housing market. I think we would all love for this to be a great single-family residence. I think everybody here would jump up and down if we could say, hey, let's change it to R1 right this instant. Everyone would be happy, but the market has spoken on this. This house has sat there. Someone tried to make it a snow cone stand at some point because no one wanted to live in it as their single-family residence. It's fallen into more of a state of disrepair. So it seems to me our legitimate options are either multifamily apartments at R5 or Mr. Misso's proposal as a more restricted C1C. In the interest of that, I think the highest and best use of this property would be a C1C. So I speak in favor of the change. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Craig Lawrence. I'm here with my wife, Maggie Lawrence. We live at 716 Crest Lane. I got to know Kevin and Lee when they first came to do work on our house. We had the opportunity to get about 4 or 5 different bids from different companies that came out and looked at our house. And we wanted to keep the exterior to be similar for our entire street is 1960s style houses, but they came in and were able to, they go to the same church as us, Church of the Highlands, and we were able to develop a comfort with them, and they were able to do an entire renovation of the entire house and keep the exterior exactly the same. And I think that's kind of similar to what they're planning on doing here. One thing that was a cool opportunity is after our warranty ran up, we had an issue that came up, and we got in touch with Kevin and Lee, and they came out and were able to fix it, even though our warranty had ran up and the cost of doing so were expensive. So I think they've just their involvement in the community and meeting with different people and just how they treat their customers and their friends has shown that this is probably, in terms of people that come along, this is probably Of course, we don't know all the information, but would probably lead you to believe this is about as good as we're going to get in terms of someone saying, here's a lot of accommodations, here's a lot of proffers that I'm going to make. These are all the different restrictions. Otherwise, one is led to believe that multifamily would come in. I heard some of the others talking about parking. I don't really think traffic or any of the water considerations would necessarily be better if multifamily comes in. You got to imagine that that house would be demolished. You got to imagine that trucks would be in and out of that property if multifamily was being developed. You have to imagine that traffic, any sort of drainage issues would be impacted a lot more than just keeping the current structure. So in terms of all that, it would seem though Kevin and Lee are willing to keep the current facility to make it as nice as possible. And in terms of kind of keeping the Homewood charm, as some of the others have mentioned, I think that's at this point our best option of the two options at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Hi, I am Mary Ballard, and I'm at 129 West Glenwood Drive. I met Kevin a couple of weeks ago when he was going door to door about his proposed plan, and I have been in my house for 30 years, and I am completely in favor. I thought it was very exciting, and I've looked at that property for a long time, so I welcome his plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you can hear me. I'm lost my voice. My name is Allison Litton. I live at 105 West Glenwood. I'm opposed to this property being rezoned. I am apparently the small portion of property owner who adjacents this property, and myself, and I know the Tuckers are opposed to it being rezoned. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dana Chang. I live at 107 West Glenwood Drive. I've been living there for going on 30 years, and I can't believe I'm having to face this again. I actually commissioned the report from Spencer Engineering, and I want to express my deep concern about the findings that Spencer made. This is for 1 inch of rain with the proposed parking area. We have a new norm. I wish it was still 1 inch at a time, but we are getting so much more. And we are seeing terrific impact, as it says in the report. And I have additional copies if you would care to see them. Additional impact further down from just West Glenwood, East Glenwood. Roseland has been flooded. Broadway continues to flood. And with the proposed additional parking area, you will have that contributory runoff. This is fact from a professional engineer who specializes in wastewater and environmental impact. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? What kind of runoff would we be facing with
1 inch.
No, with apartments, with multifamily?
That would have to be what the proposal is. You may not, let's say, I don't know that you could build apartments. I think it would be more like 2 or 3 townhouses. Would you need 10 additional parking spaces for that? What is being proposed? 1 inch of rain is a 25% increase over a tremendous amount of the neighborhood I love. And we've seen it. And more is coming because this is our new norm, ladies and gentlemen. Please look at the report.
Could you make sure that Ms. Salter has a copy of your
Absolutely.
report? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
I do not need it back.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Karen Harrison. I live at 1026 Greystone Crest. We own the property that is adjacent to the property we're talking about. I mean, right next door to it. And we do not have any problem with this proposal. We have owned that property for 30 years, have recently renovated the house there. And if it was going to impact anybody, it would be impacting us. And one reason is for 30 years, our children have lived there, our grandchildren have been raised there, and it's still in the family, and our daughter lives there. But over those 30 years, nothing has been done for that lot that other people have shared too that live there. We have watched neighbors come and go in Homewood, come in as young families, and most of them move out as their careers advanced to other areas. But we have chose to keep our home there and keep that lot. And what Mr. Musso has proposed, to me, is wonderful. It keeps the neighborhood feel. As far as flooding with an engineer, there's more than one engineer in Homewood that can look at plans and they can come to a solution that will take care of that. And I have complete faith in Kevin that he will do that. And I don't even know Kevin. I know him from a professional standing of how he has reached out to the community, and not many people would do what he has been doing and trying to reach out, hear the needs, make concessions to where he can to have that piece of property for a business. And I would love to see a business next door to us that's closed in the evenings. There is an activity going on there. More than likely, it's not real busy on the weekends. And then during the day, they're conducting their business hours. Then multi-housing, where you have other families coming in, you don't know what's going on, there's more activity, more noise, and there is more traffic. So as far as the flooding, that can be addressed appropriately when it's time and taken care of. There's not anything that Homewood cannot do. You can do it all. And Amber's been there 15 years now.
Yes, I've been there 15 years now, and I'm in full support of Kevin and Lee on this. I think what they have proposed is great. I'm with my mother.
I hope so.
Yeah, I'm with my mom.
It's that cottage feel, and it's like I had a birthday. I'm 68, and somebody asked me, "Did you have a good birthday?" And I said, "Yes." I woke up. I was still breathing. I looked in the mirror. I knew who it was. And it's like Homewood, our community. I still look in the mirror when I go to the house and visit. I like the small town feel. I like the safeness for our children. The less traffic we can have, the better. But Mr. Musso will not be bringing in the big trucks or the big cranes, because that is not what the property's intended for. And they're a young couple starting out, and they need opportunities just like all young couples to make their footprint and to move forward. And Homewood is the best place to do it. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, you did excellent.
Oh, thank you. So I appreciate the time, and I appreciate all the people that have come out and have supported it. Not the 19 that aren't here, but the ones that took out of their personal time and got in their car and made arrangements to come to support this change. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Hal Isbell. I live at 412 Crest Drive. I have known the Mesos for a couple years here now. I don't know if any of y'all have actually seen their work. They do an excellent job. Outside of the homes look great. Yard's taken care of. Everything looks fantastic. And when I drive by this home now, it just, the backyard's all torn up. There's already no grass back there, so plenty of the water's already running off. And I think you look across the street, even if you only put one of those apartments over there, you're talking about 8 separate dwellings, and you're looking at least 8 people on average. You're going to get 2 per household there, so you're looking at 16. That's 16 more cars that you got to find somewhere to park. And for all these people that are talking about how bad the traffic is through there, you're talking about 16 extra cars that either have to park on the street or they got to build a parking lot in the back. 16 parking spaces is a lot more than 8. I really think if you guys gave them a chance to run their business out of there, I think people would enjoy the way it looks. It's not going to cause anything. You're not doing anything on the weekends. You don't have any trucks. You don't have any lumber. You don't have anything looking bad, and it will look nice. So I'd just like to say that I'm in favor for the rezoning of the C1C. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
I'm Mary Ellen Snell at 902 Stewart Street, and I have a question. Do y'all know when this property was rezoned to R5? Does anybody know?
I don't know.
I just have a question. Why can't we rezone it to NPD? Why? I wonder if the people who have looked at this house, this cute house, have ever thought to ask, you know, it's zoned R5, and maybe the person selling it said, well, it's not zoned for residential, and maybe they weren't interested. But let me just bring up, I'm not for apartments. I came to speak out against apartments in downtown, so I'm just going to take the opportunity to speak out against apartments as a urban planning idea, as a buffer to a neighborhood. I don't agree with that. And I think in Homewood, we need more single-family homes. I really do. I think we need to look at our NPD zoning. So is it possible? And Kevin, hey, I appreciate the fact that you went door to door. I really do. That is the way it should be done. And all the neighbors really like what you've said about the house, keeping the house. I guess my question is, can you put in your contract that you'll turn it back over to NPD zoning at the end of a certain time? You know, is there a way, in other words, is there a way to encourage these homes to continue to be residential and not have apartments and not have mixed use and just have homes? That's all I have to say.
Well, I'll go ahead and say that when we've spoken to Mr. Misso, and we have on several occasions, we did bring up the MPD idea. I mean, the neighbors who are behind him, that is what they would like for it to do. They would love for him to rezone it back to MPD. I don't think that's a possibility, because the fact is, you're not going to really get somebody to build and buy a single-family home on that lot as it is, and as it would have to be, the cost of the house would probably be more than people would be willing to pay for that location.
Well, Amber's right beside it, and I know Amber would like it.
And a beautiful house that they just redid,
Right.
but that has been brought up, and that hasn't been.
Just an idea. To get the idea out there for people to think differently. They're saying it's R5, it has to be that or commercial. No, can we not rethink about how we do single-family homes and build our neighborhoods? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Mike Dosal. I live at 108 West Glenwood Drive. I've been a resident of Homewood for almost 3 years now. There have been a lot of people that have come up and spoken in favor of the zoning. I'm one of the residents on West Glenwood that is opposed to the zoning and did sign a petition against that for a number of reasons that have already been cited, so I'll be brief, but two of them primarily being traffic and flooding. So I just wanted to come up here and express my opposition to the rezoning.
Thank you, sir. Okay, anyone else wish to speak in favor or against this item? All right, seeing no one, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. And I'll turn it over to comments from council. Yes, Mr. Jones, you can start us off.
I'm not sure if we can pull this together, but I mean, maybe Mr. Cobb might give some idea of, did Mr. Cobb leave?
He just walked out. Just a second ago, he walked out.
I figured he would right when I wanted to ask him something. But everybody keeps talking about large apartments, and I'd like to know, based on the footprint of this particular lot, I mean, this is a very small lot. I'd like to get at least some facts in terms of if it were converted to that, are we talking about 2 apartments? Or are we talking about 30? I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to. Yeah, I mean, we're just talking a lot of conjecture, but how big is the lot? Let me see if I.
12,000 square feet.
Yes. 12,000.
Yeah, and then we have the,
Okay.
Greg, you've seen this, haven't you? This is the flood.
So 174 feet on the longest part,
I'm sorry. it's
and then 150 feet, and then 100 feet wide. Was just trying to understand, Mr. Cobb, if you put an apartment there, how many even units could even be in that footprint?
I'm sorry, Mr. Jones. Actually, I never calculated that because he came in day one saying he wanted to turn it into his office.
Right.
He wasn't interested in apartments. So I never sat down and calculated how many would fit in there according to our zoning. He did state, and we talked this morning, that he was not going to create any more hard surface than what's already there. So even though he's making parking places, it's already impervious. So he's not really changing that. But I never sat down and calculated how many apartments fit there.
Okay.
I will tell you, just on what little I know about apartments, a typical suburban apartment complex is 12 to 14 units per acre. You've got, basically, he'd have between 3 and 4 units there total. Not that they couldn't do something different on a small lot like that. What little I know, again, about apartments, it'd be pretty tough to make an economical apartment project there. In fact, it'd be very difficult, in my opinion. So I think the idea of apartments actually being there is, to me, tough. Could you put some townhouses there? Probably. I mean, there is some floodplain issues there. I don't know how much of that property is in floodplain, but I know some of it is. You could pull it out of the floodplain. I guess none of it's in the floodway.
Some of it is.
Some of it's in the floodway. then
Yes,
you
sir.
can't
It
do
is.
that unless you change the FEMA maps, so.
So you can't even build on that,
Can't
yeah.
build on that.
No, you cannot. Not, you can change the FEMA maps, but it's really expensive to do that.
Okay, thank you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Oh, no, that's
There was
okay.
just a lot of discussion on that. I wanted to quantify that.
I just never
Thank you,
sat
Mr.
down and
Harden.
figured it out because I knew it wasn't going that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, any other comments? Ms. Andrews, I'm sorry?
I do want to thank Kevin and Lee. I think the building looks great. I desperately wish it were to the northeast of where you are. I wish it were in the Crescent Linden area that's already zoned commercial. I just, repeat what I had to say the last time, which is you just have to go with the adjacent property owners, and they just are not ready for this. I think it looks terrific, though, and I do appreciate the work that you did. And like I said, I just really wish that it were within the Crescent Linden area. It would fit right in. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Mr. Wyatt?
Yes, thank you. And I'd like to thank the Mezas, too. I think y'all did a good job of going about this and explaining it, not only to the council, but the neighbors. And I'd like to thank all the neighbors on both sides of this. I think everyone has been very respectful of each other and their opinions. This is certainly a difficult issue with two options that probably aren't ideal to anybody in the neighborhood. But I do appreciate the way that everyone went about handling this and talking with each other and discussing the various positions. It is something that, I agree, I think the building that you've designed does look good. I am concerned, as Ms. Andrews said, about the adjacent property owners that are going to be looking at this property every day and what their wishes are. And I think we have to take that into account as well.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Ms. Smith, rumbling down there.
Yeah, why not? Again, I think I echo what Alex had to say. I think everybody has done a great job of being willing to listen to each other's opinions and not getting angry at each other if the opinions differ. And I do appreciate all the work that Lee and Kevin have put into this. Alex and I have been having regular conversations with the 19 neighbors who were on the letter and the letter that Keith Litton submitted earlier this week to all of the council members. And, it's a balance of, because I think what y'all have designed looks wonderful. But I also need to think about what those neighbors also believe, because it's their properties and their property values as well. And I respect everybody's opinions, but I think, those people who are looking at the backyard, we do have to take into consideration what their wishes and their opinions are, so. I think but I have appreciated everybody's respectful positions and respectful approach.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Wolverton?
Did you guys have a floodplain map? I don't.
Yeah.
Was it? Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so, flooding and non-permeable surface is, I think, a pretty prevalent topic all over the city right now. I wish that there was a way to kind of reconcile the differences in terms of some of the opposition to that being because of some of the additional parking, and whether there was I guess I'm interested to know if there was a way to make some sort of permeable parking surface that might be more amenable to people that are opposing that component of it. We have the council process for a reason, and that's what everybody's here to speak on. And I know you're never going to make everybody happy, but I think that might be one area that continued to be cited as something that was a concern. In speaking to the traffic concerns, I'm not a traffic engineer, but personally I do feel like a business would actually lessen kind of the peak traffic times that we're looking at. I know somebody, I can't remember who, but somebody in opposition of rezoning spoke to allowing the rezone would make traffic worse. I think it would actually improve because you wouldn't necessarily have as many people coming right at the same time or leaving right at the same time. But that's just my opinion. But I don't know if there's anything else that could be, spoken to in terms of parking and permeability and proffered or not.
Mr. Chairman, could I address that?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Galloway. I'll let you speak.
Yeah, this is Mr. Thompson. So it is my understanding that there's an inquiry from the Missos of whether there could be red rock or pea gravel, stone to serve to try to address that possibility, and that it's our understanding that that is not allowed, or there would have to be a variance. Is that right? Which we would be willing to pursue and would accept that as a stipulation.
You're correct. Pea gravel is not allowed. There's other ways to do permeable surfaces though, but he's at 36%. And if everybody doesn't know, you're allowed 50% coverage. So he's at 36. We're going to bring that out to 50. That's where we are. But there are other ways to do permeable surfaces. But pea gravel, for instance, or gravel is not one of them because it ends up getting tracked down the street.
We would be willing to accept, and it's obviously it's the council's call on how this goes, to accept any condition that it would have to be permeable surfaces as approved by staff and is directed, that we would not seek to prescribe that, but we would, whatever the appropriate ratio is in the appropriate material.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Wolf.
And the only other thought I had really is, as many other people do almost on a daily basis, drive by the property. I think partly due to the topography and the fact that part of it's in a floodplain and some potential uses would produce would be problematic in order to change it. Part of me wants to see something done with it for sure, and I think if it just sits there and continues to kind of fall apart, that's certainly not in the best interest of the neighbors and neighborhood, regardless of whether you're for it or against it. Again, I know somebody brought it up tonight, but it has sat vacant for some time with no real functional use for the city either. So, anyway.
Thanks, sir. Mr. McCluskey?
Yes, Mr. Kendrick, can you talk
to the point that I know they were talking about the 99 years and what would happen.
Yeah, that's not a part of this ordinance proffer. It was discussed that he would possibly put restricted covenant on us, but that's a personal property owner issue. I don't see any way the city could mandate something to be zoned one way for a period of time. What the city does simply is we prohibit him from using his property for any other purpose other than as described in the plans that are attached. And in this, now I've added the parking until such time as the council rezones it.
And in the event that they decide Riverbrook needs a little bit more room and they move to another building,
They can't use this property for anything other than exactly what is set out in the site plan and the parking without coming back to the council and having a public hearing where everyone's notified of any different use of the property.
okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against it? Mr. Harden?
When you look at this right on the, just on the, drive by there and say, God, how should that be? Obviously, you got a single-family house to the right of it, and then everything else around it is of some other use, apartments, and I'll call it institutional, commercial. The question I keep thinking to myself is, let's pretend that Mr. Meza does not get his chance to put his office here. What's the next step for the property as the neighbors who don't want it? Where do you go with it? A man named Dean Triantos owned it before. That's who he bought it from. He planned to do something with it. Planning and zoning turned him down, and he just didn't try. I don't think it's hard, but he just moved on, put his son in there, and let him live there for a while. And he may have rented it out after that. But maybe the use of it is that the neighbors buy it and make it a little community center for the neighborhood or something. But the question that I keep thinking is, what happens to this property as it sits here? It's not going to be utilized by him. Where do you go with it? And I don't know the answer to that. Clearly, he closed on it before he had the zoning, and in my world of commercial real estate, you don't do that. You get it rezoned first, and then you close on it. But yeah, where do we go next? I haven't heard any real solutions from anybody. Of course, no one owns it but Mr. Mizzo, and he's the only one who has the right anything to do with it. But where does this property go after this? Is it he doesn't get his zoning. I'm not sure where he goes next either, but you leaving it sitting there and nothing happened to it isn't a solution either, in my opinion. But I don't have the answer. We listen really hard to the neighbors. That's what matters to us. What do the neighbors want? It's their neighborhood, not ours. So we listen hard to them. But my question to the neighbors, the 18 neighbors, what do you do with it?
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. James?
Just similarly, I guess a question to the neighbors, and I understand that there's a couple of them representing a larger group, and you probably won't feel comfortable speaking to all of them, but the applicant proffered permeable parking. Does that change anyone's opinion? Seeing some heads bobbing no? Okay. I'm sorry. I asked the question, the applicant proffered permeable parking. Does that change anyone's opinion who was in opposition?
No. So I guess just to follow up on that, I mean, the reasons that I feel like we heard up here were the flooding concerns. So if that's something that's potentially remediated by doing permeable parking, why does that not make it better?
There's also a concern just of it going commercial in general. That's our main concern. That's what we're speaking. When we were asked to have opposition, we were asked to have reason, and those reasons are valid as to what I spoke to, so the flooding and things of that nature. And as a group, or as in opposition, we're commercial in general. We're not in favor of. And to the young lady's point at the end, if we could figure out a reconcile of getting back to NPD, again, I think we would all walk away really happy. There's obviously a home right next to it. Obviously, housing in Homewood is what's a good word? Been if we could get to that resolved, if that's a possibility, then I think we would be in favor. But speaking on behalf of the group I did, commercial in general, this isn't limited to the Mesos, but we were asked to provide reasons as to why we're opposed to this exact.
And I think, just to be fair, that's kind of why we're here tonight, is because the first public hearing was a different zoning. And so they placed a more restrictive zoning covenant on the property. They proffered that so that it could only be used for this one specific purpose.
Until it's sold to the next person. is my
And
understanding.
no, but then it would have to be rezoned again in order to be used for anything other than the purpose that they are proffering.
Exactly. And again, while I trust this council to do that, I can't trust the next council to do that and to keep it C1C. So what goes there next if the next council decides it's C2? So unfortunately, there is a little bit of futuristic opinions that have to go into play here.
Yeah. Well, and I do think, to be fair, again, NPD, maybe, but, why is that not something that has come up in the last 2.5 years that the property sat, anybody could purchase a piece of property to come and ask for a rezone to something else. I think, some of that business frontage, or not business frontage, but that major thoroughfare is probably part of the reason why a family doesn't look at it as highly as another piece of property that's off of the main thoroughfare. But, I understand what you're saying.
From what I understand from...
Please. Yeah, public hearing, but, ma'am, I'm gonna let you speak, but public hearing is over, but I'm gonna let you go ahead and speak, but thank you.
Just correct me if I'm mistaken. From what I understand, it's a very slim chance it can be residential, correct?
Well, Mr. Misso would have to make that decision. He would have to ask.
No, I mean a single residential, what they're talking about, making it a home.
The owner of the property would have to apply for that, correct?
Has to rezone it to NPD from
Okay,
R5, because
but
it's
which we know that
R5.
that isn't his desire, if he can have it for an office. But if he doesn't want to rezone it, then the more than likely it would be resold, correct?
You would have to ask him.
If y'all are not able to do what you wish to do, wouldn't the property probably be sold?
It will be, in all likelihood, redeveloped. Not sure who the
Who would
ownership
do it?
participants will be doing that. It will be recast.
It wouldn't be
in a
you,
different manner.
more than likely. So, I mean, forget about being futuristic. When you get as old as I am, you live in the moment. You look at what you have, take the information you have, make an informed decision, and don't be futuristic for things that you cannot predict and what you don't know what's going to happen. Yes, we're having rain right now, but we'll probably have a drought in August. We can't predict those things. All he is asking to do is to have an office and improve that
We know.
property. And I know y'all understand that. And we are right next door to them, bump to bump, fanny to fanny. And we're fine with that. And the other ones, they probably won't be there 30 years from now. We're going to be there the 99 years if God lets us. We're not letting our property go. And we are happy to have something that complements the area. And I just don't see it going to single housing. It's been like that for 30 years.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, any further comments, questions? I'll entertain a motion for action on the item.
Do I have first reading?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. Yes, thank you. First reading, Mr. Kendrick.
Yes, sir. It's an ordinance to further amend Ordinance 1602 of the City of Homewood entitled the Zoning Ordinance and the Zoning Map for the City of Homewood. Whereas the Planning Commission has recommended that the property not be rezoned C1, and if the City Council has determined to set a public hearing for tonight to consider the proffers made and rezone the property from its current zoning district R5 attached dwelling units to City of C1C zoning district. Whereas the City Council has found it necessary and desirable that the zoning on the property be described of the property described herein be set a public hearing on March 9th and is directed the city clerk to give notice. Now therefore to be it ordained by the city council as follows, that the following described property described in Exhibit A, which is the legal description, more particularly described as follows: 1619 Oxmoor Road with a parcel ID B, and the same is hereby taken out of the City of Homewood R5 attached dwelling district and rezoned to the city C1C office building district with the proffers conditions, with the following proffers, which that the property will be used exclusively as an office building. 2, that no improvements other than pursuant to the site plan attached as Exhibit 1 shall be made to the property. 3, that no outside storage of any equipment or supplies be permitted on the property. 4, that any uses other than those set out on the above property will be a violation of the zoning ordinance and subject the owner and/or occupants to penalties as provided pursuant to the zoning ordinance, which shall include injunctive relief. 5, that any changes in use of the property other than as provided herein, or construction or improvements on the property other than as described in Exhibit 1 will require the rezoning of the property. Section 6, that the owner, its occupants, and successors in interest, that would mean those who might purchase the property, voluntarily submit themselves to the jurisdiction of the court may be subject to enforcement of the conditions provided herein. 7, that the conditions on the use of the property set out are covenants running with the land and shall be binding on the owners and any successors in interest until such time as the property is rezoned from C1C. Section 2, that after the enactment of this ordinance, the property will be controlled, the uses of the property will be controlled by C1C and the proffers identified herein. Section 3, that tonight is the time and place for the public hearing, at which time all interested parties may appear and be heard. Section 4, that the city clerk is given notice of this public hearing as provided by law. Section 5, that any part of provision or order is declared to be unconstitutional or invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, all other parts or provisions of the ordinance shall remain in full force and effect. Section 5, the ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its passage and by the city council approval by the mayor or otherwise becoming law.
Thank you, sir. I'll entertain a motion for unanimous consent.
Mr. Wright.
Yes, sir, Mr. James.
Quick question. Just a couple of things. I noticed the board has a monument sign on it, whereas the exhibit attached of the outside elevations does not. Just clarification, does this?
Yeah, I asked about that.
Well, let me say this too. This is a zoning hearing. It has for the use of the property, has nothing to do with the sign. They have to comply with the sign regulations, separate and apart from whatever you might do here, as far as the use of the property is concerned.
Okay. And then the last question was, in addition to the first reading, did we determine that the applicant proffered a permeable parking?
I don't think he said the 99 can't be.
The 99 years is
Yeah, I
not something
understand
that
that.
the city can enforce.
But are we, as the council votes, are we assuming an additional, I guess, 8th restriction to state that permeable parking is approved by staff will be installed?
That wasn't what was in the ordinance that was published, but we certainly can amend that.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Galloway, I'm going to let Mr. Galloway have a...
Just real brief, in response to Councilman Thames' request, the proffer contains a provision, I think it's item 7, that the conditions would be in the form of restrictive covenants in addition to being within the four corners of the ordinance, so that if passed, we would then be obligated to record restrictive covenants that would include all this, so that one buying the property would know that it's in the public record. I'm buying it, just doing due diligence. I'm buying the property, and here are the restrictions, and they couldn't say, "Oh, I didn't know."
Yeah, what we would do about that, Tripp, is we would record this ordinance in the probate court to put all the successors and interest on notice of these restrictions.
All right, in the 99-year reference, Mr. Kendrick, and just so that it's for those who may not be familiar with this concept called the rule against perpetuities, is that there's a general premise in Alabama law that an interest in land may only last for 99 years. And so that the reference to 99 years is...
At the outset.
At the outset, right, at the outset. And so that it is contemplated that this will not change, cannot change unless this, if we want to put up a screen porch, we got to come back and rezone from C1C to C1C.
With different conditions.
With different conditions, right. And so that the 99 years is, that is the interpretation of the covenant aspect of how long this would be binding absent any alteration from a rezoning. So that is what we anticipate. There's no anticipated change. This is the course it'll be on long after most of us are not here anymore. So, okay.
All right, thanks, sir. To answer your question, Mr. James? All right, Mr. McCluskey.
Well, I want to know you're asking for, or if anybody has a motion for unanimous consent, but I think we just heard the question, I forgot who it was from up here, and looking at the owner applicant about whether or not something was going to be recast or redeveloped if this didn't go to C1C and remained R5, and the answer, or at least the nod from you guys, was that's what would happen. But based off what Mr. Cobb said earlier, we're not really sure what can happen because we didn't look at it that way. And to me personally, I'd like to see that. So I just want to let everybody know that that's my thought going into this next process.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right, I'll entertain a motion first for unanimous consent.
So moved.
By Mr. Gwaltney.
Second.
Second by Ms. Smith, and roll call vote, Ms. Melody.
Mr. Gwaltney?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Thames? Yes. Mr. Higginbotham?
No.
All right, well,
It's carried over.
it'll be carried over till our next council meeting. With the lack of unanimous consent, we will have another reading of the ordinance at our next council meeting, and action, it won't be a public hearing. The public hearing's been closed. But we'll have action on the item next council meeting, which will be
March 30th.
March
30th.
Because of spring
It is
break.
March 30th, March 30th.
You can't take action
Mr.
unless you get
Chairman?
unanimous consent with just a first reading.
It seems to me in committee, we had this, Mr. McCluskey was just discussing the same conversation in committee meeting, and I know y'all had at least one meeting that I did not get to attend on this previously. Between now and the next time the ordinance is read, I would love to be able to get some opinion from Mr. Cobb as to how many units could possibly go on there based on the size of the lot.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, thank you all. Next item, we're going to take out of order 1403-0320, which is off of our other new business agenda, which is, I'm going to let everybody give a few minutes here to exit. Okay, our next item is going to be 1403-20, request to authorize the mayor to sign AT&T contracts for connectivity. Ladies, y'all, I can't hardly hear up here. For connectivity at 310 West Valley Avenue for the new public safety building. This coming to us from James Yates with our IT department. And do we have anyone here to speak to that?
Mr. Yates?
Mr. Yates?
Oh, is he here?
Everybody turn your microphone towards your face when you talk. We can't. He said this one was turned as loud as it could be turned here. Are you having trouble with these as well?
Are you having trouble with these as well? He's turned this one up as loud as it can be turned.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Yates, go ahead. Thank you, sir.
This is basically to change the access to the public safety building, to have the access actually inside the building. What I originally proposed kind of fell apart on me. So I had to redo everything, but the main part of the thing was the gateway service, and that was handled under the other proposal I made, 19-222. What this basically does is just change the access point at the public safety building from being a shared access to individual access. Basically, the way it's turned out now, this is basically the only way I can get access into the city, into the public safety building.
All right, so this is a new contract.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President.
Yes,
The
Mr.
other-
Well, go ahead, Mr. Jones.
Well, I'm just asking, I haven't seen the contract. I mean, I thought that you would,
I thought I sent it out to you and
I'm
Mr.
looking for it.
Kendrick.
I've got it over here.
Yeah, it said AT&T or something. He said he had budgeted funds for it. It looked very similar to the other one that y'all passed on Resolution 19-222, because Mr. Kendrick called and thought it was the same one at first.
Resolution 19-222?
The one he was just talking about.
So this is basically a replacement contract.
Well, he says in addition to, I believe. It's not
AT&T?
repealing that.
Okay, okay.
No, that contract was signed, because of that portion of the contract was, it raised the price about $125 because we didn't have to pay port charge or for the COS. All we did was just increase the bandwidth. Y'all are looking at me like.
So this is the same thing that we have currently in our other city facilities that the Cerium contract put forth?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This
Same-
is a
same
Cerium
terms?
ACC contract, yes.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
just
All right.
changing,
Same speeds, everything?
same speed, yes,
Okay.
sir. And the price on this was
I was going to ask you about what the price is, yeah.
$876.
A month?
Yeah.
Thank you. We got to explain all this, okay? We can't read your mind.
Sorry.
Any further questions on this? It's a similar contract what we have in our other city service buildings. Sounds like has same requisites. Any other questions, Ms. Smith?
I just have one. So is this for phone service or is this phone, internet, everything?
This is phone, internet, network, everything. Yes,
Everything,
ma'am.
okay, okay.
Okay, any other questions? Entertain a motion for approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Approved by Ms. Andrus, second by Mr. Harden. Oh, John. Mr. Harden. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes by a vote of 10-0, and that will be our first.
Somebody abstain.
No, Mr. Thames.
Mr. Thames is not here.
Stepped out.
Resolution.
Thank you.
I didn't know Mr. Thames.
Mr.
All
Thames,
right,
you just walk out.
Resolution 2033.
And Mr. Yates, I get first dibs on my computer when it goes out because I got you moved up to the next item after this one. I'm sorry that you had to sit through the other public hearing. So next time computer problems, I'm first.
All right, back to our old business agenda. Next item is going to be 05-11-19, which is a request to authorize the mayor to sign a contract with the Birmingham Jefferson Transit Authority for fiscal year 2019-2020. This initially coming to us from Robert Burgett, our finance director, Melody Salter, our city clerk. And Mrs. Smith, I think I will turn it over to you as to where we stand on this today.
So we have been, we would like to reinstate the contract, which has not been signed yet. Well, no, it has not been signed yet. Because we wanted to reinstitute Route 14, which was deleted from our service. And so we are trying to reinstitute Route 14, which required putting in a new ADA compliant bus pad over on West Valley. And I was out there 2 days ago, and it looked like it was done, but I'm guessing the rain has slowed their construction somewhat. But we had questions because the map that they submitted to us as part of the new exhibits looks like the new route doesn't reach the bus pad, although Josh has told us that it does, but the map doesn't say what he says it says. And we need to get numbers confirmed because we're starting the service later than we originally intended to. It was supposed to start back on March 1st. Clearly, it is March 9th, and we have not started back yet. So the numbers need to be adjusted, but we feel like we can get all of that done in the next week. So what I'd like to do is move to approve the mayor sign the contract under the stipulation that we get the questions answered by BJCTA about making sure that Josh is correct in his assurances, and I'm sure that he is, that the bus pad is actually on the route, and that the money makes sense in terms of the reduced hours of service that we're going to receive because we didn't start back Route 14 when we had originally intended to.
That's going to be consistent with the reduced hours.
Yes, we want to make sure that the amount is consistent with the reduced hours and that the bus pad is in the right place.
So I have a motion for approval based on
contingent on those.
Route 14 being included, and that the numbers are indeed consistent with the reduced hours that has been verbally confirmed, but is not in our email right now.
Correct.
So, all right, so that's a motion from Mrs. Smith, second by Mr. Hickenbotham. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that's going to be 11-0 vote, and that will be ordinance 20-30.
Resolution.
I'm sorry, resolution 20-34. All right, next item, 08-1019, public hearing for March 30, 2020, for consideration for the city to vacate land between 904 Highland Road and 909 Irving Road. So we will carry that over until the public hearing on March 30. 05-0220, request for consideration to discuss revenue auditing services for the city. This item is coming to us from our finance director and our city clerk, and we will begin with this one with a report from finance. Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. The Finance Committee met on Monday, March the 2nd, and for this particular item voted 4-0 to recommend River Tree renewal pending the review by Mr. Kendrick. So 4-0 coming out of finance.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. That's a favorable vote coming out of finance. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so River Tree will stand as approved, and that will be resolution 20-35. 210220, request to amend fiscal year 19-20 budgets, coming to us from our finance director and our city clerk. And this is a budget amendment, and another report from our Finance Committee Chairman, Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. The committee met and voted 4-0 to recommend approval of this item.
Thank you, sir. Favorable vote out of Finance again on this item. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And so those budget amendments will be approved, and that'll be under Resolution 20-36. Next item, 230220, request for consideration to restructure creek walls at Wingate Circle. This item is coming to us from, I have Councilors Gwaltney and Jones on this, and I believe we have
McCluskey.
Well, it
McCluskey
does.
Jones, but it was in Public Works, I think,
But it was
first
in
before it
Public
was in
Works,
Finance,
we
wasn't
believe, so.
Did you have it on this one, Mr. Walton?
No, I believe it was in finance.
It was in finance, okay. All right, well, we're going to attribute this to Mr. Jones. And do you have a report in finance on this one, Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir,
We got
Mr.
two
President.
committees.
I believe Public Works had dropped it pending the vote from Finance. So within Finance, we did meet and vote 4-0 to recommend approval of this funding not to exceed $7,500.
All right, so it's $7,500 approved for the creek walls at Wingate Circle. A favorable vote. Did you say 4-0?
4-0.
Out of finance, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that funding is approved, and that's going to be
Mr.
resolution.
Jones, was that from small infrastructure?
Small infrastructure.
Okay.
That's going to be 20-37.
Oh, you have some more saying, John?
And 240220, which is a request for consideration for purchasing additional cybersecurity coverage for the city. This also coming from our finance director, Robert Brigette, and our city clerk, Melody Salter. And another report from Mr. Jones.
And before I do that, Ms. Salter, it was not small infrastructure, was it? On the last item, I just want to clarify.
He had creek walls.
The creek wall,
Okay.
okay. I thought that might not be right. So
It's both in capital, but different.
Coming out of the creek wall line item, since we've had a lot of creek walls, haven't we, Mr. Cobb? So,
and we'll
moving
continue.
on, yeah, so just to make note of that. Moving on to 2402, as you asked for, we met and voted 4-0 to recommend approval of this item.
Thank you, sir. So that's a favorable vote coming out of finance for the purchase of additional cybersecurity coverage for our city.
Mr. President, can I make a comment? This is,
Yes, sir,
I want to
Mr.
make sure
Hart.
we understand, this is the additional coverage of not cybersecurity itself, but insurance coverage to help us with cyber. It's not stated clearly on here, but this is to increase the insurance coverage with Cobbs Allen for that.
Correct.
Yes, yeah, not cybersecurity as in like extra.
Not the actual security.
Yeah, not the actual security measures, but
Technical
the
security,
insurance. Yeah,
but
right.
got you, for insurance coverage. All right, favorable vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that's another 11-0 vote, and that'll be resolution 20-38. Next item, 250220, request for consideration of a road-through agreement with Jefferson County. This one coming to us from our mayor, Scott McBrayer, and we get another report from finance from Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. The committee met and voted 4-0 to recommend approval of this item.
All right, and that is a favorable vote coming out of finance. Any questions or discussions about this one? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, 11-0 vote, and that'll be resolution 20-39. Next item, 040120, request for consideration of freshwater land trust and in-stream litter collection. This item coming to us from Russia Smith with the Freshwater Land Trust Executive Director, and Sally LaRue, the Outreach Director, and our Counselor, Jennifer Andrus. And another report from our Finance Committee Chairman, Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. After the presentation and the deliberation, the committee met, voted 4-0 to recommend approval for this item.
Thank you, sir. And favorable vote out of Finance. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 11-0 vote on that. Resolution 20-40. 200120, request to look at options to improve parking at intersection of 19th Place and 29th Avenue. This item coming to us from Jennifer Mims and Counselor Jennifer Andrus. And Mr. Jones, we get another report from Finance on this.
I believe this is my last one. The committee met and voted 4-0 to recommend approval of funding not to exceed $5,000.
All right, so that is a favorable vote out of Finance. Mr. Harden.
Yeah, I want to make sure that's for the engineering side of it, so everybody understands. That's not for the work
Yes,
itself.
that's for the engineering. That's
Yes,
correct.
and I don't know, Jennifer, if you want to elaborate on, that's for the changing the.
Yes. From Highway 31 to 19th Place, taking out that turn lane and adding angled parking. We think we can get up to 10 spaces there. I met with Andrea Snyder, and so we are at this time not looking at 19th Place to 19th Street. So we are just going from Highway 31 to 19th Place.
19th Place, got it. Okay. So that is a favorable vote, excuse me, out of Finance. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that passes 11-0, and that'll be Resolution 20-41. 181119, request for consideration of Parking Management System RFI. This one coming to us from Councilors Amy Gwaltney and Britt Thames, and we get a report from Public Works, I believe, on this one, Mr. Gwaltney.
So the committee met voted 5-0 to refer this out of finance, and we carried it over in our committee just for updates.
Okay, so,
We presented the options and we decided to kick it to the committee, refer to finance, and decide we wanted to fund.
okay, so we're basically just referring this to Finance Committee for further action. Okay. All right. Favorable vote, send it to Finance Committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so we'll take that up. I assume that's on your agenda already. Okay. 150220,
Yeah,
request.
it's going to be after this one.
Okay, fair enough. 150220, request for update of Phase 2 of the Shades Creek Greenway. This item coming to us from Councilor Jennifer Andrus, Andy Gwaltney, Britt Thames, and Alex Wyatt. And we get a report from Public Works on this one. Mr. Gwaltney?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. The committee met and voted 5-0 to recommend approval. The motion was made by Councilor Wyatt and seconded by Councilor Harden.
Okay, so that's a favorable vote of 5-0. Any questions or discussions about this one?
Can I ask a question, please?
Mr. Kendrick?
As I understood, the engineer proposed that you cutting back on the project.
It was the elimination of the section of the trail behind the treatment plant.
What are we approving?
We voted to eliminate that section. The motion was made contingent upon future approval.
I just didn't have that in my notes.
We were saving money.
Did we not accept the alternative? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
No, it was part of the original scope, but because it was only a loop out and loop back, and due to the conditions of the trail, the engineer recommended that we cut it from the scope, considering it was estimated 8 years ago. So we were looking at over budget.
All right, thank you, sir. So that is coming with a favorable vote out of Public Works. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And Mike, is that going to be resolution, Mike?
Well, no, sir, I didn't prepare one because I was under the impression that we would authorize him to bid, and I guess that'd be the next step. Is that what the committee desires?
Yeah, he said the bid was going to occur already in June.
From the state.
June 26th.
Just an instruction to the engineer.
Just an instruction?
Clarify that what's-
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I will say currently, there's definitely a chance it's going to kick out to August, but no later, I mean, not August, I'm sorry, no later than July, and if it did go to July, construction will start in August.
All right.
Mr. Ryan, just be instructions to the engineer about how to design what to do.
Okay, all right, no resolution on that one. Then next item, 250417, request for consideration of 18th Street Revitalization Project, coming to us from Mr. Thames. And I have down here a report from Planning and Development. Mr. Thames.
Mr. White handled it, but I believe it was simply referred to the Finance Committee in anticipation of bids coming back March 17th.
That's what it was.
And was there a vote on it?
There was, I don't know what the number was, but it was unanimous.
Sorry, we should have given it to both of y'all, sorry.
That's okay.
But Mr. Thames wasn't there, so it was 4-0.
Just want to make sure, so therefore, we can just all vote right now.
Correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that will pass with a referral to Finance Committee for setting a bid opening on the 18th Street Revitalization Project. That gets us to 020220, request for permission to close West Linwood Drive for a block party on May 17th, 2020. This is coming to us from Ellie Thompson and Berkeley Squires, and we get a report from Public Safety on this. Mr. McCluskey?
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee met and voted 4-0 to recommend approval. Motion was made by Councilor Wyatt, seconded by Councilor Andrus.
Thank you, sir. So it's favorable vote coming out of Public Safety. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 11-0 vote, and that'll be Resolution 20-42. 160220, request for consideration for lighting for the 700 block of Windsor Drive. This item coming from our Ward 5 councilors, Jennifer Andrus and John Harden. And we have a report on this from Public Safety, Mr. McCluskey.
Yes, after the recommendation from Randy Hamley in the Traffic Department, the committee met and voted 4-0 to refer this item to the Finance Committee. Motion was made by Councilor White and seconded by Councilor Andrus.
Thank you, sir. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 11-0. Resolution 20-43. Next item, 220220, request for consideration of work in the city right-of-way at 211 Lakeshore Parkway. This from Interplan Chick-fil-A and Greg Cobb and Wyatt Pugh with our BEZ department. And we will begin on this one with a report from Special Issues.
Yes, committee met last Monday, and we heard a presentation from a representative of Interplan, which I believe is the engineering company that's working on this project with Chick-fil-A. They need access to the right-of-way in order to run a water line onto the property to have a fire hydrant on the property, which is required by code, I believe, at this point, during their renovation. So the committee voted 5-0 to recommend approving the right-of-way work pending the proper indemnification agreements. Motion was made by Mr. Higginbotham and seconded by Ms. Andrus.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Smith. And Mr. Cobb, do you have something to add to this?
I have a question, really. I should have talked to Mr. Kendrick earlier, but, and I didn't think to, but when we gave the road to DOT, did we not give them the right-of-way also?
No.
We didn't?
We still have.
Okay. Okay, so we've got control of the trees and the landscape and all out there.
Yeah, I would think so. I need to go back and look at the deed. but I don't remember.
I meant to call you and ask you that question.
As a road, as the Highway 149, I believe.
Okay.
It's-
I'm sorry, I should have asked you that question last week, and I just lost it
They
somewhere.
need something from the state, that's their problem.
I called the state about it too, and they didn't know what the answer was. So, anyway, it is required for their fire water line, so I would suggest we give them access.
We're requiring from our building construction.
Fire marshal.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
All right, so that's a favorable vote coming out of our Special Issues Committee, 5-0. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, and that resolution will stand as approved as Resolution 20-44. That will bring us to our committee referral agenda. And I do want to alert everyone there was a typo on 120320, which is a request to set a public hearing and referral to Planning and Development Committee for consideration to rezone property at 2927 Central Avenue it should be from C1 to I2 institutional. It had an error of it saying LC1. Okay, so that should be C1 to I2 institutional district. And so with that typo correction, I will entertain a motion for approval of the committee referral agenda.
So moved.
Second.
By Mrs. Smith, second by Mr. Harden. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that agenda is approved. Yes, sir, Mr. Kendrick?
The 160220, 700 block Windsor Drive lighting, that was referred to finance, was it not?
It was.
Yes, it was.
Okay, so it wasn't a resolution.
The other resolution should be 2043 to 2044.
Chick-fil-A resolution 2043.
Yep, thank you. You're right.
Yes, sorry, you're right.
All right, so just to clarify, 160220 was not a resolution. 220220 was a resolution. Instead of it being 20-44, it should be 20-43.
Okay.
Okay, that gets us to our, the rest of our items on other new business, which is, first one is 120320, request to set a public hearing for consideration to rezone property at 2927 Central Avenue. This is what we just spoke about, from C1 to I2. The applicant for this being Chris Eckroat,
This OLS Church. Catholic Diocese.
with the Catholic Diocese of Birmingham to permit development of a surface parking lot in support of adjacent Our Lady of Sorrows Church. This is coming from the Planning Commission, had a vote of 6-0 for favorable recommendation. And we're going to set a public hearing for this without objection for April 13th at 6 o'clock. Next item, 130320, request to authorize the mayor to sign construction agreement with AlDOT for a state public road and bridge funding project. This item is coming to us from Melody Salter, our city clerk, and
This is for the mayor
If you
to
wanna
sign
make-
an
yeah.
agreement for the $500,000 that they've offered for the Green Springs revitalization.
all right, so this is for the $500,000 AlDOT funding coming towards our Green Springs revitalization project. Do I have any other questions or discussion on that?
I would move to approve.
All right, quickly, Mrs. Smith, and second by Mr. Hickenbotham. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that will stand approved, and I believe that will be Resolution 20-44. Next item, 150320, request to authorize the mayor to sign a contract with Shoal Engineering for supervision of drainage work, coming to us from Greg Cobb and the BEZ. And of course, Greg, this is related to the emergency work going out, which we discussed at the hospital.
Yes, sir, from the meeting last Wednesday night.
Okay. And this is just so we can get the contract with our engineers.
Yes, sir.
And you sent us this, we got this today. There were two kinds. There's a $2,000 contract and a...
It's all on one. It's additional work. We already have contract with Shoal that did the design of the project, and this is now to build it. We got contractor actually is already on site today. We'll start laying pipe this week.
All right, and is
the way
this...
the weather looks, who knows?
All right, and where's funding for this coming from?
We put it in the budget amendment that we did on Wednesday night. We put it to storm sewer and
Thank you.
drainage.
So it was in, that's right, you're right. We did put
This
in the
item is just to
budget
get him to authorize the mayor to sign, not to.
I got it. Okay. Any further questions or discussion on this?
Move to approve.
I have a motion for approval from Mrs. Smith and a second from Mr. Gwaltney. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that funding for the engineering contract is approved, and authority for the mayor to sign that contract. 160320 is a request for consideration of approval of vouchers for the period of February 25th, 2020 through March 9th, 2020. And this
Mrs. Smith
goes to Mrs. Smith.
Yep. Had a couple questions. Robert answered them for me this afternoon, so I would move that we approve the vouchers for February 25th through March 9th.
All right, so I have a motion for approval from Mrs. Smith, a second from Mr. Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the vouchers, therefore, will be approved, and that'll be Resolution 20-45. And the vouchers will be approved through March 9th, 2020.
It's 2046. Shoal is 45.
I skipped over that one. I'm sorry, guys. Thank you. Just fill in the blanks. All right. Next item is 060220, which is a request. We still have this request for consideration for funding street improvements. Do we still, is that how it's?
We just added it to the committee referral agenda. It's already in finance, but y'all had the work session on it.
Yeah.
And so it's already still in finance. You just.
But is it still described as street improvements? Is that?
That was the original item. It was Mr. Waltney had on the fund street
Okay,
improvements.
I just
And then
need
you
to
wanted
make sure
y'all wanted it to be discussion of all capital projects.
All right, so it's really for capital
But you're really
projects.
just reporting out in that work session, y'all discussed it. It's
Yeah.
already in finance, but we're going to ask Cass to be there.
All right, so we're going to send this to, in fact, it's already in finance. So I will go ahead and entertain a motion in a second, just so we cover this, to make sure we have this. Our next capital improvement discussion will be set in committee and finance.
Move to approve that.
A motion for Ms. Andrus.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wyatt. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that's going to be lined up for our finance
And
committee.
you want me to get Mr. Cass to be there, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you for that. We talked about that already. All right, so that'll bring us to the end of our agenda, and comments, Mr. Mayor.
In lieu of comments, I'm going to call Aldott for our half.
Yeah, really? Seriously.
I know, but they're going to want some more from us on some other stuff, so, but, yeah. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Gwaltney?
I will set public, Councilman Andrews, I meant to ask you, do you think we'll have a report on 120220 or the flooding issue in Lena?
I have got an email, I've spoken with Commissioner Anmans. I've got an email into Councilor Abbott, who I've not heard back from. So that is per Commissioner Anmans, I need to set up a meeting with Abbott, and I've not heard back from her yet.
Just a report,
yeah.
not a whole lot.
I think that's yeah.
I will assume finance is at 5 o'clock. How long do you need, Walter? 30 minutes. Councilor Jones? 30 minutes. I will set public works for 5:30 for 15 minutes. And
The 16th.
No further comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
You
Gwaltney.
want to talk about the 16th, correct? A week from tonight?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Thames. Yeah, this will be for, these committee meetings will be for March 16th. Mr. Thames? Oh.
All right, what's up, P&D?
Don't let us interfere with y'all's discussions.
I was trying to cut everybody some slack and not call P&D, but,
Sidebar.
yeah.
But since I was smarty pants, you're going to call it after all.
That's right, so I'll call it for 5:45.
All right.
And, no comments.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hickenbotham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Don't think I have any real comments other than, as I expressed earlier in the evening, I feel like we really should adopt a resolution calling for an end to daylight savings time. It is a burden on our community and a waste of time, frankly.
You know, I had a nice spin on that one. I had a nice spin. You know, when we gain an hour in the fall, we gain an hour. That's a nice thing. And then when we lose an hour, we gain an hour of daylight. So there you go. That's positive.
That is positive. The negative would be that studies have shown that there are more medical emergencies as a consequence of both time changes, actually. But we'll just leave it there and agree to disagree, Mr. Chairman. We'll leave it there and agree that our chairman wishes that everybody would lose an hour every year, and just leave it at that.
All right, you continue to look at that glass half empty, okay?
I will. I'm just looking at the glass.
Mr. Wolverton, please, sir.
There's actually some legislature going on about that right now. It's called the Sunshine Protection Act, but we'll see if it goes anywhere.
Okay.
Really the only thing is, wanted to thank everybody that came out and supported the Wine 10K race this weekend, and for the people that put it together and make it run. Obviously, as we'll find out in a few weeks, I think there's going to be a new item that we're going to try and discuss to make some of that a little more cleanly run and better organized in the future, just in terms of notifications to people that might be affected by race courses, that kind of thing. But it is a nice problem to have.
Yes.
It was fun, and I do think this was the last year that I could put all 4 kids Tetris style into the double stroller to push it. So it was fun. I enjoyed it. I want it to stay, but I do want to try and alleviate some of the issues that have been produced by having races without as much foreknowledge for residents. So
Okay, fair enough.
That's it.
Look forward, because we have a lot of races, so we
That's right.
need to do that.
Good problem to have.
Absolutely. All right, Mr. McCluskey.
Mr. Thames, how long do you need for P&D? 15. Okay. I will set public safety for 6 o'clock, and I will also only need about 15 minutes, Ms. Smith. So, and other than that, that's it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jones.
Yes, finance at 5, and I wanted to thank Ms. Salter for helping with the resolution. This has been a long time coming. I was talking to my son this morning about being excited about it. He goes, well, it's about time. You talked about this a year ago, and you took so long to pull it together. And he's right.
I do have to thank Robin Holloman, who works for the mayor, because she Facebook stalked him when she found out a lot of intel on him. And I didn't know it was the guy, but I actually wanted the mayor to do a proclamation after one of the first Exceptional Foundation ball games, because I didn't know that was the same guy, but he makes it so fun when he calls out.
Yes.
'Cause he said, there's PMAC going up to score a hoop, but anyway, but Robin Holloman too did a great job.
Well, good, yeah,
Facebook
she did, and I
And I'll pass that along to
appreciate
her.
you taking care of that mayor. I mean, that's just, I just think they do a great job, and it's just nice to have a balance in our meeting. We have a lot of opposition with different things, but it's good when we all come together. So, thank you for everybody's support on that. Nothing further.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. And Mrs. Smith.
I'm going to set special issues for 6:15, and I'm going to make up for the people who didn't have comments because I got a bunch. Before the last meeting on February 24th, I actually attended a service fair hosted by the Jefferson Blunt Shelby Mental Health Authority. One of our representatives, Donna Burgess, asked me to attend that. She serves on that board for us as a Homewood representative, and she invited me to come. It was extremely informative. They do so much work. It is amazing, all of the things that they do. They service everybody from small children up to adults with special needs, hearing, and I mean, it's amazing the work that they do. And they work in pretty much all the communities around here. We don't ever see them or hear from them, but they do really good work. So just want to give them a big shout out because they really do amazing things. The College Choice Foundation is hosting our Wild West Roundup fundraiser on Sunday, 3/15 after Cornapalooza. They do not, that's right, you can just switch up and go Wild West Roundup after you throw cornhole. So it's from 5 to 8 at Good People Brewery, and we're going to have food with Little Donkey, so that's going to be fun, and a band. I have not given any varsity soccer updates, so I have fallen down on my job. They are currently 5-2. We've had a lot of games rained out, as you might imagine. The only 2 games they've lost were to 7A Hoover, who's the defending state champion and will probably be the state champion again this year, and another 7A team. Last year, Hardy was the only sophomore on the varsity team with 19 seniors. This year, there are 6 sophomores and about an equal number of seniors. So we're a young team, but they're hardworking and they're doing really well. So I'll give y'all updates periodically.
And they're ranked 3rd in the state, I saw that.
They are, which was very disappointing to my son, by the way. He was very upset, and they fell out of the Super Bowl, so that was very upsetting to him. But it's okay. They're gonna fight back. And then Jennifer and I have been working along with Melody and a lot of other really great people in the city to work on our census issues. There are currently 4 census banners hung up around the city. My sweet husband went out with me on Saturday and hung banners all day long. It was really fun. And Jennifer and I are going to be on CBS 42 at noon on March 31st talking about the census in Homewood in advance of Census Day on April 1st. So, yep. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. And Mr. Wyatt.
So I appreciate the lead in on Cornapalooza. Sunday afternoon at Pizzeria GM. You can still get a team if you're interested. Secondly, I'd like to thank Ms. Smith again and Berkeley for the LED lights that have been going up on the street. They look fantastic. I actually had one night where half my street was done and the other half was not, and you could tell the difference, and they really do look great. And then lastly, congratulations to the Exceptional Foundation for the chili cook-off. There were 158, I think, teams, and I've been to a lot of these. This was easily the biggest crowd I've ever seen out there. It was
amazing.
The weather was, the weather was perfect. Everyone was tired of being inside from the rain, so everyone was out there, and I mean, the crowd was enormous. Everyone had a good time. Some of the participants from the Exceptional Foundation did various shows that were all entertaining as always, but it was a great day. So congratulations again to them.
Okay, like Ms. Smith, I have lots of things to make up for that you guys did not talk about. So everybody get your calendars out. I got some things for your calendars. Number 1, mine and Peter's Kiwanis Club have a pancake breakfast this Saturday at the Exceptional Foundation, so please come support the Kiwanis and all the work that they do in the area. Then you will move on to the high school later that day to purchase your mattresses and your pillows. Please support Homewood Athletics. Then please add March the 30th. I really want you guys to come join us for the council roundtable. Homewood is hosting, but we will be at Vulcan, and our guest speakers will be Bryson Stevens of the Eldon B. Stevens family and Jane Reed Ross to talk about a new trail project that will originate in Birmingham, touch in Homewood, and end in Mountain Brook. So I will leave it at that. But that is a lunch, and it will be at 11:30 at Vulcan. And then, speaking of the census, on April the 1st, Deborah Faust is putting together, we're going to have a kickoff on April 1st. That is Census Day. I want each one of you to be there because we will all be taking the census together in the library at, everybody got that? April the 1st. So please make sure to be there for that because that's going to be a big kickoff. So not April Fools. We need you to sign up because It is dire, y'all. I will say this. I heard the presentation from Big Communications, who was hired by the state, by ADECA, to do the census for Alabama. And you will be shocked to know that we are the only state that's spending less than $1 per person on their marketing. So California is spending $7 a person on their marketing alone, and we are spending 70 cents a person on their marketing alone. So this is really dire. Like, we really could lose up to 2 congressional representatives. That is big time. That means 2 electoral votes. That means $1 bazillion. I don't even know. I'm not a numbers person. That means a lot of money. It's bad. I mean, it's really bad. Infrastructure. No, but it is really dire. I mean, this is really serious. I will tell you that the goal that we are trying to hit, if we hit 82%, 82% is the number we need to hit. 10 years ago, we hit 73%. So we got a lot of work to do. So it's really dire. So we really need to just, I want everybody here to send out to your constituents to make sure that they touch everybody they know with this.
And what time is that with Deborah Fout?
Do we show up to do?
Oh, we haven't got that figured out yet, but we're working on it. But it is, but it's going to be a big deal. We're going to have, yeah. Yes, just the whole day is Census Day. Right, cancel depositions. Okay, let's see. Tennis, we are 84-6. The girls and boys are 84-6. We are crushing it. We still haven't played Briarwood yet, but we're crushing it. And lastly, Amy Milam, I'm so glad you're still sitting here. I love you. I'm still going to make you work for the HEC, even though you say you're leaving, you're not leaving the HEC. You're always going to be with HEC. But anyway, I want to thank Amy. Amy and Barry and I were at church all weekend long, recycling, and her commitment to these environmental issues just never waver. And I just can't thank you enough. And I just can't tell you how much I've enjoyed working with you the last few years. And we'll still work together, just in a different capacity. But love you dearly. So that's it. I'm done.
Wow.
All right, Mr. Harden.
I'm trying, I know everybody wants to go home. I think we have a track meet on Saturday, I believe. I have a son that's on the track team, but he messed up his thigh or something the first day, and so he hasn't done anything since. But I appreciate all the struggle we had on this rezoning. It's not an easy thing. The neighbors clearly don't want it, and that makes it tough, but it does sit there for just, it's begging for something to be done to it. He clearly was going to make it look nice, but there's a lot of reason to understand why the neighbors don't want it zoned commercial long-term. There's all kinds of things that could happen long-term. So anyway, but I know that there's a lot of consternation here with us, and which means we care, and we're trying to figure out what's best there. And grateful to be here. Thank you.
And we're glad you're here. And
Mr.
I would
Wright,
just, yes,
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Jones.
I neglected to thank someone.
Please, we do not want that to go unnoticed.
Well, I was going to say, this past weekend was Saturday was opening day for baseball, and for folks in my stage in life that live at the baseball park. Last year, if you recall, we were putting the finishing touches on the new park when opening day happened, but everything was perfect. So I wanted to thank our parks department. It was incredible, and that first day, there's lots of grandparents out there, people from out of town, and it was just constant compliments on how nice our facilities are. And it's just incredible to see, and I've got 7U going, and I've got 10U going, and I think there are record numbers of players this year in both. There's kids everywhere. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank our Parks Department for making, opening day really perfect. Everybody was impressed. It was great.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wolverton.
I did forget one somewhat critical thing. There is going to be yet one more race this weekend in the neighborhood. However, it is the Hall Kent Color Run, and it is a 1 block around the school in every direction. So that will be at 2 o'clock. So just don't drive near the school around 2, 3 o'clock.
Gotcha. Thank you, sir. All right, just to remind everyone, I expect to see each and every one of you this Saturday at Pancake Day. I'll be taking roll. So it starts at 6, it goes to noon. So you all can just check in with me when you come. Really, I just want to take a moment I just feel like standing up and applauding for Coach Sills. He's worth every bit of it, and my kid is receiving benefits from him, but thousands have benefited from that incredible man, and we're just lucky to have him. I also want to report, as we hear all these sports results, that, gosh, everyone has skipped over our show choir, okay? I'm the show choir reporter, and we were at Auburn, and Mr. Harden, you weren't there, were you, Mr. Harden?
Mr. Wright, I absolutely was there. I didn't stay for the second round.
Okay, I was there
Are you
till
kidding?
midnight, but
Oh.
y'all, it's just very proud seeing Homewood
question.
kids up there performing lights out like a Broadway show, and they're up against schools from Mississippi and Georgia and Tennessee, and they win. It's
Yep.
just, it's very refreshing, and urge you guys to keep supporting them and go see a show if you get a chance. Lastly, I just want to comment about, follow up Mr. Harden's comments about the zoning issue today, and that look forward to us. We'll look at it in committee and or back when we come back for a second reading and look for that consideration. But I really just wanted to commend both sides of the debate tonight on how it was handled, particularly the petitioner. And I don't know where it's going to end up, but the way that was handled was just something to be admired. And no matter which, and it's a tough issue for us. And but it was, yeah, it was all the credit to the president, I think. Thank you, Mr. Jones. But I did want to make a comment about that. All right, we've been here long enough. We are adjourned. See you guys March 30, I guess, for next meeting. Thank you. March 16th.